I returned home from an overseas posting 5 days early. My son wasn't inside the house. My wife said he's camping with Grandpa, or went to the cabin. Found my son chained to a tree, barefoot, no shirt, mosquito bites all over his body. Daddy, please save me. I can't endure it anymore. He'd been there for 3 days. I cut him free. He collapsed. Daddy, there's someone behind the cabin. What I saw there was, can you imagine flying halfway across the world, heart pounding, ready to surprise your son for his 9th birthday, only to walk into your own home and realize he's gone? What if the person you trusted most, the one who swore to protect him, was actually the architect of his suffering? My world shattered that night, but the primal rage that erupted would dismantle an empire built on cruelty, starting with my own family. For 12 years, my life was tracking illegal wildlife traffickers across Southeast Asia. Think remote jungles, corrupt border towns, brutal criminal networks. That was my normal. The work was isolating, demanding months away from home, but I was good at it. I learned patience, observation, how to read people who lied for a living. I built an unbreakable resolve. But nothing, and I mean nothing, in those 12 years prepared me for what I found on a humid July evening, right here in rural Pennsylvania. I was supposed to be in Thailand for another week, but I'd gathered enough evidence early. My intel had just led to 17 arrests, collapsing a major trafficking ring. I caught a military transport back, buzzing with anticipation, eager to surprise Matthew for his 9th birthday. I'd missed 3 of his last 5 birthdays. Not this one. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway at 9 p.m. No cars, no lights, just the porch lamp running on a timer. That's when the first knot of dread tightened in my gut. I unlocked the front door. The living room was pristine, unnervingly so. Too clean for a house with a 9-year-old boy. No scattered toys, no video game controllers, no half-finished art projects on the coffee table. Brandy, I called out. Matthew. Silence. Just a deafening, echoing silence. I moved through the house methodically, the way I'd approach a suspected poacher's camp. My wife's closet was half empty. Matthew's room looked untouched, his bed made with hospital corners he'd never manage. My heart sank. On the kitchen counter, I found a note in Brandy's handwriting. Taking Matthew camping with Dad at the cabin. Back Tuesday. Don't worry. Tuesday. That was 4 days away. And Matthew hated camping. Suddenly, a conversation from before I left for Thailand slammed into my mind. Brandy had wanted to send Matthew to some wilderness therapy program. Her father, Dale Hobbs, kept recommending. Someplace in Montana, promising to toughen up boys who were too soft. I'd shut it down immediately. Matthew was sensitive, artistic, thoughtful, exactly the kind of kid who'd be destroyed by some military-style boot camp. He needs discipline, Brandy had insisted. He cries over everything. He won't even play sports. Daddy says. I don't care what Dale says. I'd cut her off. Matthew is fine. He's 9 years old. Let him be 9. Now, that argument echoed in the empty kitchen. Dale Hobbs owned a hunting cabin 3 hours north, deep in state forest land. I'd been there twice. Both times, I'd been repulsed by how Dale glorified violence and showed utter contempt for anything he perceived as weakness. The man had served 20 years in the army, coming home with a chest full of medals and a worldview that divided humanity into warriors and victims. I grabbed my go-bag from the truck, never fully unpacked from years of field work, and headed north. The July heat had broken into a thunderstorm, rain hammering my windshield as I drove through increasingly rural roads. My phone lost signal after the first hour. By midnight, I was navigating by memory down a rutted dirt road that snaked through a dense pine forest. The cabin appeared through the trees, windows dark. I killed my headlights and approached on foot, instincts honed from years of surveillance taking over. Dale's pickup truck sat in the clearing, mud-splattered and empty. No sign of Brandy's sedan. Then I heard it, a sound that sent ice through my veins. Crying. A child crying, muffled and hoarse. I moved toward the sound, circling around the cabin's east side. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness, but what I saw in the beam of my flashlight ignited a rage unlike anything I'd ever felt. Matthew. He was chained to a massive oak tree 20 feet behind the cabin. My son wore only shorts. No shoes, no shirt. Even in the darkness, I could see the welts covering his thin arms, the countless mosquito bites, the way his lips were cracked and bleeding. A heavy chain was wrapped around the tree trunk, connected to a shackle around Matthew's ankle. Matthew! I breathed, running forward. My son's head jerked up, eyes wide with disbelief and desperate hope. Daddy! The word came out as a croak. Daddy, please help me. I can't take it anymore. I was already pulling out my multi-tool, working at the shackle's lock. My hands shook with fury. How long have you been out here, buddy? 3 days, Matthew whispered. Grandpa said I needed to learn to be tough. He said I couldn't come inside until I stopped crying. But I can't stop. I'm so thirsty. And my leg hurts, and the bugs. The lock gave way. I caught my son as he collapsed, his leg unable to support weight after 3 days in one position. He weighed nothing, all ribs and sharp angles. I lifted him easily, but Matthew grabbed my shirt with surprising strength. Daddy, he whispered urgently. There's someone else behind the cabin. In the shed, I heard crying at night. Not me. Someone else. I went still. Someone else. A girl? I think she was crying for her mama. Grandpa told me to shut up, or I'd end up in the shed too. Every instinct I developed over 12 years screamed. I carried Matthew to my truck first, wrapped him in an emergency blanket, gave him small sips of water. Stay here. Lock the doors. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, or if anyone else comes, you drive away. Remember how I taught you? Matthew nodded, terror in his eyes, but also something else. Trust. Trust that his father would handle this. I approached the shed behind the cabin with my flashlight and the hunting knife I always carried. The shed was padlocked from the outside. I cut through the cheap lock with bolt cutters I grabbed from Dale's own truck bed. The smell hit me first. Urine. Sweat. Fear. Inside, huddled in the corner on a pile of dirty blankets, was a girl about 12 years old. Dark, matted hair, filthy t-shirt and shorts. When my light found her face, she screamed and tried to press herself further into the corner. It's okay, I said, keeping my voice low and calm. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help. My name is Julian. What's yours? Sophia, she whispered. Sophia Morrison. Please don't tell him I talked. She broke into sobs. How long have you been here, Sophia? I don't know. Weeks. My mom's boyfriend brought me. He said I needed to learn respect. He said, her voice dissolved into crying. Something cold and calculating settled over me. This wasn't just abuse. This was systematic, organized, and if there were 2 children, there might be more. I pulled out my phone, no signal, and focused on immediate priorities. Sophia, I'm going to get you out of here. You're going to be safe. But I need you to tell me, where's the man who put you here? Dale Hobbs, where is he? Inside, she whispered. He drinks whiskey every night and passes out on the couch. That's when I can hear the other kids crying. There are more. He has a whole list. He calls it his rehabilitation program. Parents pay him to fix their problem children. My jaw clenched. How many children? 6, maybe 7. I heard him talking on the phone. He has camps like this all over. Other men help him. They bring kids whose parents think they're too soft, too disobedient, anything. They break them. Some kids never leave. I had documented human trafficking. I had seen the aftermath of poachers who'd killed endangered species for profit. I had witnessed corruption that destroyed communities. But this hit differently. These were children. One of them was my son. And Brandy had known. She had delivered Matthew to this. Stay here just a moment longer, I told Sophia. I want to make sure it's safe. Then I'm taking you and my son away from here. I approached the cabin from the back, moving silently across the wet ground. Through a window, I could see Dale Hobbs sprawled on a couch, an empty whiskey bottle on the floor beside him. 62 years old, thick-shouldered, barrel-chested, his gray hair cut military short. He snored loudly. I tried the back door. Unlocked. Inside, my eyes cataloged everything. On a desk in the corner sat a computer, papers scattered around it. A filing cabinet stood against one wall. And on the wall itself, a map of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia with red pins marking different locations. Each pin, I realized, likely marked another site like this one. I photographed everything with my phone, knowing the pictures would save locally even without a signal. Then I opened the filing cabinet. Inside were folders, each labeled with a child's name. Contract agreements, Payment records. Parents' signatures authorizing wilderness rehabilitation therapy. It was all dressed up as legal contracts that gave Dale custody for 60 to 90 days, liability waivers, medical consent forms. The parents had signed away their children to a monster, believing they were helping them. Matthew's folder sat near the front. Brandy had signed the contract 2 weeks ago, the day after I left for Thailand. 60-day program. Objective: eliminate crying, increase masculine resilience, establish dominance response. My hands shook as I photographed every page. Then I saw another folder, marked Network Associates. Inside were names, addresses, phone numbers. 15 men running similar operations across 5 states. Some were Dale's former Army buddies. Others were parents who'd gone through the program with their own children and decided to franchise it. This was bigger than one sadistic grandfather. This was an organized criminal enterprise masquerading as tough love therapy. I heard movement behind me. I spun to find Dale lurching upright on the couch, eyes blurry with alcohol and sleep. "The hell, Julian?" Dale's confusion shifted to anger. "You're not supposed to be back until I found my son chained to a tree," I said quietly. The calmness in my own voice surprised me. It was the same tone I used before taking down a poaching ring. Cold, controlled, absolutely certain of my next moves. Dale stood, swaying slightly. "Boy needed discipline." Brandy agreed. "This is about making him into a man instead of there's a 12-year-old girl locked in your shed, Dale." Dale's expression hardened. "That's none of your business. Her parents signed. I have evidence of child abuse, false imprisonment, and human trafficking," I countered. "I've documented everything. I've photographed your files, your network, your list of locations." I held up my phone. "I'm taking my son. I'm taking Sophia Morrison. And then I'm going to dismantle everything you built." Dale moved faster than I expected for a drunk 62-year-old. He lunged for a gun cabinet mounted on the wall. I intercepted him. 12 years of fieldwork against 20 years of military training that had gone soft with age and alcohol. We crashed into the desk, paper scattering. Dale got his hands on a hunting rifle, but I'd already anticipated the move. I swept Dale's legs, and the older man went down hard, the rifle clattering away. "You think you can stop this?" Dale spat, blood from a split lip staining his teeth. "You think you understand how the world works? These kids need to be broken down and rebuilt. Their parents know it. Society knows it. You're the problem, Julian. You and all the other weak men raising weak children." I looked down at the man who'd tortured my son. "I spent 12 years taking down criminal organizations. I know exactly how to dismantle what you've built, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you are." I zip-tied Dale's hands and feet with restraints from my go bag, always prepared for field work, and gagged him with a kitchen towel. Then I gathered every file, every piece of paper, every electronic device I could find. I loaded it all into Dale's pickup truck, along with Matthew and Sophia. As we drove away from the cabin, Matthew huddled against my side while Sophia sat wrapped in blankets in the back seat. Both children were silent, except for occasional trembling breaths. "Where are we going?" Matthew finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. My jaw set in a hard line. "First, we're getting you both checked by doctors, and I'm making some calls. And then your grandfather and everyone associated with him are going to pay for what they've done." "What about Mom?" Matthew's voice was so small, so broken. I didn't answer immediately. The betrayal cut deep, like a phantom limb. Brandy had signed a contract. She had lied to me. She had knowingly delivered our son to torture. But Matthew didn't need to process that yet. First, they needed safety. Then truth. Then justice. "We'll figure that out, buddy," I said. "But right now you're safe. I've got you. Nobody's ever going to hurt you like that again." In the rearview mirror, I could see the cabin disappearing into the darkness behind us. But in my mind, I was already 3 steps ahead, planning exactly how I would destroy Dale Hobbs and everyone who'd enabled his crimes. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about making sure no other child ended up chained to a tree in the darkness, crying for help that might never come. And Julian Hunt was uniquely qualified to ensure that justice was served. The emergency room at Mercy General Hospital in Clearfield was quiet at 3 a.m. when I carried Matthew through the doors, Sophia walking beside us, wrapped in my jacket. The triage nurse's eyes widened at the sight. Matthew's mosquito-covered torso the shackle marks around his ankle, Sophia's hunted expression and malnourished frame. "I need doctors," I said, my voice calm but with an edge. "These children have been held against their will and abused. I also need the police and child protective services." The hospital erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses swept Matthew and Sophia into separate examination rooms. I found myself giving a statement to a sheriff's deputy named Kevin Bond, a heavy-set man in his 40s who'd clearly been roused from sleep. "So, your son was chained to a tree for 3 days?" Deputy Bond repeated, writing in a notebook. "And you found another child locked in a shed?" "Yes. And this is just one location." I pulled out my phone, began showing him the photographs of Dale's files. "He's running a network across 5 states. 15 locations. Possibly dozens of children. Parents are paying him to torture their kids under the guise of wilderness therapy." Bond's expression shifted from skepticism to horror as he scrolled through the images. "Jesus Christ. We need to call the FBI." "I already planned on it," I said. "But there's something else you need to know. My wife, Brandy Hunt, signed a contract that put my son in that situation. She's complicit. Where is she now?" "I don't know. She wasn't at the cabin." Bond made another note. "We'll issue a bolo. Mr. Hunt, I need you to understand what you've uncovered here is going to trigger multiple investigations. FBI, state police, child protective services across multiple states. It's going to get complicated." "I know." My voice was flat. "I've worked with federal agencies before. I document wildlife trafficking for the International Conservation Coalition. I know how multi-jurisdictional cases work." This caught Bond's attention. "You're an investigator?" "Field researcher and investigator. 12 years. I've taken down poaching rings operating across 4 continents. I know how to build cases." Bond studied me with new respect. "Then you probably know your wife could face serious charges. Conspiracy to commit child abuse, endangerment, possibly human trafficking, depending on how the DA sees it." "Good," I said coldly. A doctor emerged from Matthew's room, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes. "Mr. Hunt, I'm Dr. Carolyn Metcalf. I need to talk to you about your son's condition." I stood. "How bad is it?" "Physically, he's dehydrated and malnourished. The shackle left deep bruising and abrasions around his ankle. He has over 200 mosquito bites, several infected, possible mild hypothermia from 3 nights exposed to the elements. We're running blood work, but I expect he'll make a full physical recovery with treatment." "And psychologically?" Dr. Metcalf's expression darkened. "That's going to take longer. He's traumatized, Mr. Hunt. He keeps asking if he's still in trouble for crying. He apologizes every time he shows emotion. Whatever your father-in-law did to him, it was systematic psychological abuse designed to break his spirit." I felt my hands curl into fists. "Can I see him?" "Of course. He's asking for you." Matthew lay in a hospital bed, looking impossibly small under the white sheets and 4 dripping fluids into his arm. When he saw me, tears started immediately, and then Matthew's face crumpled in panic. I'm sorry, he gasped. "I know I'm not supposed to cry. I'll be tougher, I promise." I was at his side instantly, gathering my son carefully against my chest. "Matthew, listen to me. You cry as much as you need to. There is nothing wrong with crying. There is nothing wrong with being sensitive or kind or gentle. Your grandfather was wrong. Do you hear me? He was wrong." Matthew buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed, 3 days of terror releasing in shuddering gasps. I held him, one hand stroking his hair, whispering reassurances that it was over, that he was safe, that nobody would hurt him again. When Matthew finally exhausted himself into silence, I eased him back onto the pillows. "I need to ask you some questions, buddy. Can you do that?" Matthew nodded. "Did Grandpa hurt any other kids while you were there?" "There was Sophia, and I heard others at night crying, sometimes screaming. Grandpa would go check on them with his flashlight. He'd tell me that's what happened to kids who didn't learn their lessons." "Did your mom know when she dropped you off? Did she see where you'd be staying?" Matthew's eyes dropped. "She and Grandpa talked before she left. She said she couldn't deal with having a son who was weak. She said Grandpa would fix me, make me normal." Something inside me turned to ice. The betrayal was complete. Brandy hadn't been fooled or manipulated. She'd been an active participant. "What else did you hear?" I asked gently. "Any names? Anything about the other locations? Matthew thought hard. Grandpa talked on the phone a lot. He mentioned someone named Marvin and someone called Vernon. He said they were having problems at the Maryland camp because some social worker was asking questions. Marvin and Vernon. I made mental notes. I'd seen those names in Dale's Network Associates folder, Marvin Fisher and Vernon Rasmussen, both with addresses in Maryland. A knock on the door interrupted us. Deputy Bond entered with a woman in a dark suit, mid-40s, sharp eyes, and the bearing of federal law enforcement. Mr. Hunt, this is Special Agent Betsy Stafford, FBI. I've briefed her on the situation. Agent Stafford got straight to business. Mr. Hunt, what you've uncovered is potentially one of the largest child abuse networks we've seen in years. I'm going to need copies of all those files you took from Dale Hobbs's cabin. We're mobilizing teams to hit every location simultaneously before they have a chance to shut down or move children. You'll have everything, I said, but I want to be involved in taking them down. Stafford raised an eyebrow. You're a victim's family member. We can't have you. I'm an investigator with 12 years of experience in international criminal networks. I speak 4 languages. I have contacts in federal agencies across 3 continents, and I know my father-in-law's psychology better than anyone else alive. My voice was steel. You use me as a resource, or I'll run my own parallel investigation, and you'll trip over me every step of the way. Stafford and Bond exchanged glances. Finally, Stafford nodded. Consultant basis only. You follow our rules. No cowboy shit. Agreed. Good. Because we've got another problem. Stafford pulled out her phone, showed me a message. One of Dale's network associates just sent out a group text. Code read, Hobbs' cabin compromised. Initiate containment protocol. My blood ran cold. Containment protocol? We're interpreting that as an order to move or hide the children. Possibly destroy evidence. We're talking about dozens of kids across 15 locations. We need to move fast. Then let's move, I said. Agent Stafford left to coordinate with her team. Deputy Bond stayed behind, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Hunt, there's something else. We tracked down your wife's location. She's at her sister's house in Harrisburg. Should we bring her in? I looked down at Matthew, who had fallen into an exhausted sleep. My son looked peaceful for the first time in days, the tight fear gone from his face. But I knew that peace was temporary. Matthew would have to face the truth about his mother eventually. Yes, I said quietly. Bring her in. I want her to face what she's done. By dawn, the hospital room had transformed into an impromptu command center. FBI agents came and went, coordinating raids across 5 states. I sat at a makeshift desk, a hospital tray table, reviewing the files I'd taken from Dale's cabin, cross-referencing them with law enforcement databases. Sophia Morrison's parents had been located and notified. Her mother, Krista Navarro, arrived at 6 a.m., dissolving into tears when she saw her daughter. Sophia's stepfather, the man who'd sent her to Dale's camp, was already in custody, picked up at his home in Pittsburgh. I didn't know. Krista kept saying. He told me it was a legitimate therapeutic program. I thought they'd do camping and counseling. I didn't know. I watched the reunion, comparing it to what awaited my own family. Krista had been deceived. Brandy had not. Agent Stafford approached with a tablet. We've hit 6 locations so far. Recovered 23 children. Every location matches the pattern. Remote cabins, chains, isolation cells. Some of these kids have been there for months. She showed me photos. Children with haunted eyes, emaciated frames, bruises and scars. Your father-in-law built something horrific. What about the other network associates? Marvin Fisher and Vernon Rasmussen are in custody. So are 4 others. But we're still looking for... She consulted her notes. Dale's primary partner, a man named Cliff Barrett, former Marine, dishonorably discharged for assault. He runs the Virginia operations, and there's evidence he's more violent than Dale. He's not at any of the known locations, and we think he might have Brandy. My head snapped up. What? We found messages between them. Seems your wife and Barrett were involved. Romantically. The affair started about 8 months ago. The pieces clicked together in my mind with sickening clarity. Brandy hadn't just handed Matthew over to her father. She'd been planning something bigger. She was going to disappear, I said quietly. Take the money from Dale's operation and run with Barrett. Stafford nodded grimly. That's our theory. We found transfer records. Your wife embezzled $60,000 from your joint accounts 3 weeks ago. Moved it to an offshore account. The financial betrayal barely registered compared to everything else. Where do you think they are? Barrett has a property in West Virginia, very remote. We're organizing a team, but it's going to take time. The property is booby-trapped. Motion sensors, cameras. He's paranoid. I studied the map Stafford showed me. The property sat in dense wilderness, accessible only by a single dirt road. Perfect for someone who wanted to vanish. I can get in, I said. Absolutely not. This is an FBI operation. I've spent 12 years infiltrating poacher camps that make Barrett's paranoia look amateur. I can recon the property, confirm they're there, and give you real-time intelligence for your raid. Stafford started to protest, but Deputy Bond interrupted. Actually, that might work. If Hunt goes in as a civilian looking for his wife, it gives us plausible deniability. If Barrett shoots him, that's attempted murder on a federal investigation witness. Makes our case stronger. Thanks for that, I muttered. Stafford considered it. You'd be wired. You'd have backup. And you'd follow our operational protocols. Exactly. Deal. Dr. Metcalf appeared in the doorway. Mr. Hunt, Matthew's awake. And there's someone here claiming to be his grandmother. I tensed. Dale's wife. Lurid Hobbs. Brandy's mother. I hadn't even thought about her involvement. In the hallway stood a thin woman in her 50s, her face drawn with shock. Lurid Hobbs looked nothing like her husband. Where Dale was brutal strength, she seemed fragile. Her hands twisted together nervously. Julian, she said, her voice trembling. They told me what Dale did, what he's been doing. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. He told me he was helping at-risk youth. He showed me testimonials from grateful parents. I never went to the cabin. He said it was his private retreat. I studied her, my investigator instincts analyzing every micro-expression. She seemed genuine, but I'd been fooled before. Brandy knew, I said flatly. Lurid closed her eyes. I think I knew something was wrong with her. She changed about a year ago. Became cold. Started talking about Matthew the way Dale did, like he was a problem to be fixed instead of a child to be loved. I thought it was stress from your job, from being alone so much. She looked at me with desperate eyes. Can I see my grandson? I made a decision. 5 minutes. Supervised. If he gets upset, you leave immediately. Lurid nodded gratefully. Matthew's reaction to his grandmother was telling. He didn't recoil. Didn't show fear. Instead, he looked confused. Grandma, did you know about the tree? No, sweetheart. Lurid sat carefully on the edge of his bed. I didn't know. If I had known, I would have stopped it. I promise you that. But Grandpa said Mom told you it was okay. He said everyone agreed I needed to be fixed. Lurid shot a horrified look at me. Your mother lied to me, to all of us. And your grandfather's going to jail for a very long time. After Lurid left, I sat with Matthew again. My son looked older, somehow, as if 3 days had aged him years. Dad, what's going to happen to Mom? I had been dreading this question. She's going to face consequences for what she did. Probably jail time. Did she really want them to hurt me? I don't know what she was thinking, buddy. But what she did was wrong. Adults are supposed to protect children, not hurt them. Do you still love her? I was quiet for a long moment. I love the woman I thought she was, Matthew. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Matthew absorbed this. I'm scared. I don't want to turn out like Grandpa, mean and angry. You won't, I said firmly. And you know how I know? Because you're worried about it. Mean people don't worry about being mean. They just are. A nurse brought food, the first real meal Matthew had eaten in days. While my son ate, I stepped into the hallway to take a call from Agent Stafford. We got Brandy, she said. Found her at a motel outside Harrisburg. She's claiming she didn't know the full extent of what Dale was doing. Says she thought it was just tough love camping. Bullshit, I said. She signed a 60-day contract. She authorized physical restraints. She lied about where Matthew was. I know. We're charging her with conspiracy to commit child abuse, child endangerment, and financial fraud. But here's the thing. She's asking to see you. Says she'll only talk to you. My jaw clenched. When? Today, if you can. She's at the county jail. I'll have someone drive you. I looked back at Matthew's room. My son was safe now, under hospital protection, with his grandmother nearby. And I needed answers. Not for myself, but for the case. For making sure Brandy and everyone involved paid fully for their crimes. "I'll go," I said. The drive to the county jail gave me time to think. I'd spent 12 years documenting criminals, understanding their motivations, learning how to extract information. I knew interrogation techniques, knew how to read body language, knew how to find the cracks in someone's story. But this was different. This was the woman I'd spent 10 years married to. The woman I trusted with my son's life. Brandy sat in an interrogation room, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She'd always been beautiful, blonde hair, sharp features, the kind of confidence that turned heads. Now she looked diminished, mascara smudged, hair uncombed. "Julian," she said when I entered. "Thank God. You have to help me. They're saying I'm going to prison. They don't understand. Daddy convinced me that Matthew needed." I cut through her words like a knife. I sat across from her, my expression neutral. "I know about Cliff Barrett. I know about the affair. I know about the $60,000. I know you weren't fooled or manipulated. You were an active participant in a child torture network." Brandy's face went pale. "That's not— I didn't. The FBI has your messages, your financial records, your signature on contracts authorizing physical restraints for our son. So, let's skip the part where you lie to me, and you tell me what I need to know." She stared at me. Then something in her expression shifted. The desperate innocence fell away, replaced by something harder. "You were never around," she said coldly. "Gone for months at a time, saving animals while your own family fell apart. Matthew was turning into a weak, whiny child, and you weren't there to do anything about it. So, you decided to torture him. I decided to make him stronger. Daddy's program works, Julian. I've seen the testimonials. Kids come in soft and leave tough, able to handle the real world. Sophia Morrison weighs 70 pounds. She's 12 years old. She was locked in a shed for 3 weeks. Her parents paid for results. Sometimes the process is difficult. I forced myself to remain calm. Where is Cliff Barrett?" Brandy smiled slightly. "Why would I tell you that? Because if you cooperate, the FBI might consider a plea deal. Right now, you're looking at 20 years minimum. Help them find Barrett and the remaining children, and maybe you get 15. Maybe you see daylight again before you're 50. She studied me. "What do I get if I help you?" "A chance at redemption. A chance to prove you're not completely lost." Brandy laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Redemption. You always were naive, Julian. There's no such thing as redemption. There's only winning and losing. And I'm not losing." She leaned forward. "Cliff has contingency plans. Hidden locations the FBI doesn't know about. Children scattered in places you'll never find. If you push too hard, if you prosecute everyone involved, those children disappear. Foster care records altered. Missing person reports buried. You'll never find them all." I felt cold rage settle over me. "You're threatening to make children disappear if you don't get what you want." "I'm negotiating. That's what smart people do." "What do you want?" "Immunity. Full immunity for me and Cliff. We testify against Dale and the network associates. You get your headlines about taking down a child abuse ring, and we walk away." I stood. "No, then dozens of children stay lost. The FBI will find them, and you'll spend the rest of your life in prison." "See, Brandy, I spent 12 years learning how to track criminals who think they're clever. I've found poachers in jungles spanning thousands of square miles. You think Cliff Barrett can hide better than international trafficking rings with unlimited resources? He's going down. Everyone's going down. Including you." I walked to the door. "Julian." Brandy's voice stopped me. "You're making a mistake. Cliff isn't like Dale. He's not some drunk old man. He's smart, and he's dangerous, and he's prepared to do anything to avoid capture. So am I said and left. In the hallway, Agent Stafford waited with Deputy Bond. "Did she give us anything?" "Not yet, but she will. Right now, she still thinks she has leverage." I looked at Stafford. "When's the operation to take Barrett's compound?" "Tomorrow morning. 0600. You're still serious about going in first?" "Absolutely. Then let's get you prepped." The FBI's field office in Harrisburg had transformed into a war room. Maps cover the walls, showing Barrett's West Virginia property, 48 acres of dense forest with a central compound. Satellite imagery showed 3 structures: a main house, a large barn, and what looked like a bunker. We've got thermal imaging showing 9 heat signatures, Stafford explained, pointing to the satellite photos. Could be Barrett and Brandy, plus 7 children. Or could be booby traps giving off heat. We won't know until we're inside. I studied the terrain. What's the access? Single dirt road, heavily monitored. Motion, sensors along the perimeter. Cameras on the main approaches. Barrett's paranoid, but he's also overconfident. He doesn't think anyone knows about this location, but you found it. Credit card purchases at a hardware store near the property. Barrett bought supplies under an alias, but the FBI's financial crimes unit tracked it through shell companies. Took us 2 days. I pointed to a ridge overlooking the compound. If I come in from here, through the forest, I can bypass the security. He's watching the roads, not the high ground. It's a 3-mile hike through rough terrain. I've done worse. I traversed brutal jungle terrain, tracking poachers. A West Virginia forest was manageable. Agent Stafford equipped me with a wire, a GPS tracker, and a panic button. You get eyes on the compound, confirm Barrett and the children are there, and you get out. You do not engage. You do not attempt to rescue. You give us intelligence, and we do our job. Clear. Clear. And Julian, if Barrett suspects anything, if this goes south, you hit that panic button. We'll be 2 miles out, ready to move in. I nodded, but in my mind, I was already planning contingencies. If children were in danger, if Barrett was preparing to run or harm them, I wasn't going to wait for FBI bureaucracy. I'd spent 12 years protecting the innocent from those who'd exploit them. This was no different, except this time, it was personal. As I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your son cried for 3 days straight. The boy I'm with now lasted only 2. Some children break faster than others. CB. Cliff Barrett was taunting me, revealing he had another child captive. The message was designed to provoke me into making a mistake, rushing in unprepared. I show the text to Stafford. He knows we're coming, or he suspects. Either way, we move tomorrow as planned. No, I said. We move tonight. He sent that text to buy time. He's probably already moving children, destroying evidence. We can't give him 12 hours. Stafford hesitated, then made a decision. I'll mobilize my team. We go in at midnight. That gives you 4 hours to get into position. I was already moving toward the door. Then I'd better get started. The forest was dark and dense as I made my way up the ridge, overlooking Barrett's compound. I moved silently, my night vision goggles turning the world into shades of green. Years of tracking poachers had taught me how to move through wilderness without disturbing the environment, where to place my feet, how to avoid dry branches, how to become part of the landscape. It took me 2 hours to reach the overlook. From my position, I could see the entire compound spread below. The main house lit from within. The barn dark. The bunker entrance sealed. I counted 3 vehicles, a truck, an SUV, and a van. Through the main house windows, I spotted movement. A man matching Cliff Barrett's description, mid-40s, muscular, military bearing. And there was Brandy, pacing near a window, gesturing animatedly. They were arguing. I activated my wire. Overwatch in position. 2 adults confirmed in main house. No visual on children yet. Stafford's voice crackled in my ear. Roger, we're in position, waiting for your signal. I adjusted my scope, scanning the barn and bunker. That's where the children would be, hidden away from sight. I needed to confirm their location before the FBI moved in. Then I saw it. A light flickering in the barn's second-floor window. And a shadow, small, child-sized, pressed against the glass. Barn, second floor. At least 1 child visible. Movement below caught my attention. Barrett emerged from the house, carrying a rifle. He walked toward the bunker, unlocked it, and descended inside. Minutes passed. When Barrett re-emerged, he was carrying a metal case. Subject is arming himself. Possible explosives in the case he's carrying. This situation is escalating. Stand by, Stafford ordered. Do not engage. But my instincts screamed warning. Barrett was preparing for a siege, or an immediate danger. Barrett returned to the house. Through the windows, I watched him place the case on a table and open it. Inside were bundles of what looked like plastic explosives and a dead man's switch. Barrett was wiring the house to blow. He's booby-trapping the compound, I reported. If we raid now, he detonates. Children are at risk. What do you recommend? Stafford's voice was tense. I made a decision that would change everything. I'm going in. I can disarm the explosives before you move. Negative. You're not trained for. I've disarmed poacher traps that would take your hand off. I can do this. Before Stafford could protest further, I was moving. I descended the ridge, approaching the compound from the blind side of the barn. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from controlled focus. Every sense heightened. I reached the barn side entrance, picked the lock with practiced efficiency, a skill learned from years of accessing poacher supply sheds. Inside, the barn smelled of hay and old wood. I climbed a ladder to the second floor. 6 children sat huddled in a corner, chained together by their ankles. They ranged from about 7 to 13 years old. When they saw me, several started to cry. Others shrank back in terror. I'm here to help, I whispered. I'm getting you out, but you need to stay quiet. Can you do that? A girl about 11, dark hair, defiant eyes despite her circumstances, nodded. You're not one of them? No. I'm a father looking for children who've been taken. Like you. There are more, she whispered. In the bunker. He keeps the difficult ones there. My jaw clenched. How many? 3. Maybe 4. I pulled out my multi-tool and began working on the chains. The locks were industrial grade. This would take time. Time I didn't have. Then lights flooded the barn. Barrett's voice boomed from outside. Julian Hunt. I know you're in there. I've got motion sensors you tripped. You've got 10 seconds to come out before I detonate this whole compound. The children whimpered. The girl who'd spoken grabbed my arm. He's serious. He showed us the explosives. Said if anyone tried to rescue us, he'd blow everything up. I thought fast. Barrett was bluffing. Had to be. He wouldn't kill himself. But he might kill the children to avoid capture. FBI! Stafford's amplified voice echoed across the compound. Cliff Barrett, you're surrounded. Release the children and surrender. You've got 20 FBI agents out there. Barrett called back. Explosives wired to detonate. If my heart stops, you shoot me, everyone dies. I've got a dead man switch. You understand what that means? I understood perfectly. Barrett had rigged himself as a human bomb. If he died, or let go of the switch, the compound exploded. What do you want? Stafford shouted. Safe passage. Me and Brandy. We walk out of here, get in that van, and drive away. You don't follow. In 24 hours, I'll call and tell you where the children are. You know we can't agree to that. Then we all die together. I looked at the 6 children, watching me with terrified eyes. They'd been tortured, imprisoned, traumatized. They deserved to go home. They deserved to live. And I had spent 12 years ensuring that the innocent survived while the guilty faced justice. I activated my wire, speaking quietly. Stafford, I need 60 seconds. What are you? Trust me. 60 seconds. I turned to the children. I need you to do exactly what I say. When I give a signal, you're going to run out that door and straight to the FBI agents. Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run. Understand? They nodded, terrified but trusting. I descended the ladder and walked out of the barn, hands raised. Barrett stood 30 feet away, a device in his left hand, the dead man's switch. Brandy stood behind him, her face pale. Smart move, Hunt, Barrett said. Now you're going to tell those FBI agents to. I had spent 12 years studying predators, knowing when they'd attack, when they'd run, when they were vulnerable. Barrett had the arrogance of a military background, the assumption that his training made him superior. But I had faced down poachers who'd killed dozens, had stared into the eyes of men who valued profit over life. Barrett was just another predator, and I knew exactly how to handle predators. The FBI isn't going to let you walk, I said calmly, taking a slow step forward. You know that, but you've got leverage with those children. So let's talk about what you really want. I took another step. You want to survive. You want to avoid prison. You want to feel like you're in control. Another step. But you've already lost, Barrett. The network is dismantled. Dale's in custody. Every location has been raided. It's over. I've still got the switch. Barrett's hand tightened on the device. That's a bluff, I said, now just 15 feet away. You're not suicidal, and you're too proud to kill yourself just to hurt others. You're a survivor. That's what your whole life has been about. Surviving, adapting, staying ahead of your enemies. You don't know me. I know exactly who you are. You're a man who got dishonorably discharged for assault, who found a way to monetize cruelty, who seduced my wife because she had access to resources you needed. You're smart, calculating, and you always have an exit strategy. I was 10 feet away now. So here's my offer. You give me that switch. You release the children, and you surrender. The FBI gets their headlines. You get to live. Maybe you even cut a deal. Testify against the others. Reduce your sentence. Barrett laughed. Why would I trust anything you? I moved. 12 years of hand-to-hand training in hostile environments, of disarming poachers who held weapons, of survival instincts honed to razor sharpness. I closed the distance in a burst of speed, grabbed Barrett's wrist holding the switch, and twisted hard. Barrett tried to pull away, but I had anticipated the move. I swept Barrett's legs, drove him to the ground, and maintained an iron grip on the wrist. The switch fell from Barrett's hand. I scooped it up and tossed it to Brandy. Hold this. Don't let go. And I drove my fist into Barrett's face. Once. Twice. All the rage of finding my son chained to a tree. Of learning about Sophia Morrison. Of seeing 6 terrified children in that barn. It all channeled through my fists. FBI agents swarmed the compound. Stafford grabbed the switch from Brandy's shaking hands. Other agents tackled Barrett, cuffing him as he struggled and cursed. I stood, breathing hard, knuckles bleeding. I looked at Brandy, who was crying, her makeup streaked and ruined. I'm sorry, she sobbed. Julian, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't. Save it for the judge, I said coldly. The FBI swept the compound. They found the 3 additional children in the bunker, malnourished, terrified, but alive. They found Barrett's records, his financial accounts, evidence of dozens more children who'd gone through his camps over the years. They also found bodies. 2 children buried in the woods behind the compound, dead from accidents during the therapy sessions. I sat on the hood of an FBI vehicle, watching as the children were loaded into ambulances. Paramedics treated my bleeding knuckles. Stafford approached with a bottle of water. You violated operational protocol, she said. I know. You could have gotten everyone killed. I know. And you probably saved 23 lives tonight. She handed me the water. Good work. I drank, exhaustion finally catching up to me. What happens now? Barrett and Brandy go to trial. So do the other network associates. We've recovered 47 children total across all locations. Some of them have been missing for years. Parents thought they'd run away or been placed in foster care. This case is going to be massive. And Dale Hobbs already confessed to everything, trying to cut a deal by blaming Barrett for the rest of it. Won't work. He's looking at life without parole. I closed my eyes. Good. What about you? What's next? I thought of Matthew, still in the hospital, recovering from his ordeal. My son, who'd asked if he'd turn out like his grandfather. My son, who needed to learn that strength came in many forms. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. That compassion wasn't failure. That crying didn't make you less of a man. Next, I said, I go home to my son. I help him heal, and I make sure he knows he's perfect exactly as he is. And after that, I looked at the compound, at the barn where 6 children had waited for rescue, at the bunker where 3 more had been hidden. After that, I make sure something like this never happens again. Stafford nodded. We could use someone with your skills. Consulting work, helping us take down these kinds of operations before they get this big. I'll think about it. As dawn broke over the West Virginia mountains, I sat in the back of an FBI vehicle, heading back to Pennsylvania. My phone buzzed with messages from Dr. Metcalf about Matthew's progress, from Deputy Bond about lured Hobbs' statement, from the International Conservation Coalition asking when I'd return to work. But I only cared about one thing, getting back to my son. Everything else could wait. 4 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom, watching Dale Hobbs, Cliff Barrett, Brandy Hunt, and 12 other network associates face sentencing. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Heather Solomon, showed no mercy. Dale Hobbs, you systematically tortured children under the guise of therapy. You created a network of abuse that destroyed families and killed innocents. I sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole. Dale's face remained impassive. He'd aged 20 years in 4 weeks. His military bearing collapsed into defeat. Cliff Barrett, your actions resulted in the deaths of 2 children and the traumatization of dozens more. Life in prison without parole. Barrett stared at me with pure hatred. I stared back unmoved. Brandy Hunt, you betrayed your own child, conspired to torture him, and participated in a criminal network. I sentence you to 30 years in federal prison. Brandy wept, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd married had never really existed. She'd been a mask hiding something rotten underneath. The other associates received sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. By the time court adjourned, the entire network had been dismantled, everyone involved facing justice. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. I pushed through them without comment. Agent Stafford had offered to help me avoid the press, but I wanted them to see me. I wanted the world to know that these crimes hadn't gone unpunished. Matthew waited with Lured at a coffee shop down the street. My son had started therapy and was slowly recovering. He smiled when he saw me, a genuine smile, the first in months. "Is it over?" Matthew asked. "It's over," I confirmed. "Can we go home now?" I knelt down to my son's level. "Actually, I was thinking we could go somewhere new. Fresh start, new house, new town, new school where nobody knows what happened. What do you think?" Matthew considered this seriously. "Will you be there? Or will you have to go back to Thailand?" "I'm taking a different job, buddy. One that keeps me in the country. I'll be home every night." "Then yes," Matthew said, a small grin forming. "Let's go somewhere new." Lured wiped tears from her eyes. "I'll help however I can. I know I can't make up for what Dale did. You're not responsible for your husband's crimes," I said. "And Matthew deserves to have a grandmother in his life. A real one." 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of our new home in Vermont, watching Matthew play with our new dog, a golden retriever named Scout. My son laughed, genuinely laughed, as Scout bounded through fallen leaves. I had taken a consulting position with the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit, helping them identify and dismantle abuse networks before they could grow. I worked from home mostly, traveled occasionally, but never for more than a few days. Matthew attended a small school where he'd made friends, other sensitive, artistic kids who appreciated his kindness instead of mocking it. He still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at loud noises, still apologized too quickly when he made mistakes. But he was healing. Slowly, steadily. My phone buzzed. A text from Agent Stafford. "New case. Suspected abuse network in Oregon. Could use your expertise." I looked at Matthew, at my son's happy face, at the normal childhood he was finally getting to experience. Then I typed back, "Send me the files. I'll review them tonight." Because I had learned something in that forest, finding my son chained to a tree. I had learned that evil flourished when good people looked away. That monsters wore respectable faces. That sometimes justice required people willing to wade into darkness to pull innocence back into the light. And I had learned that being a father meant more than just providing. It meant protecting, teaching, showing by example that strength came in many forms. That crying wasn't weakness. That compassion was courage. That standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves was the truest form of heroism. Dale Hobbs had tried to break Matthew. Instead, he'd revealed his own brokenness. Brandy had tried to change her son into something he wasn't. Instead, she'd lost him forever. Cliff Barrett had tried to profit from cruelty. Instead, he'd ended up caged like the monster he was. And Julian Hunt, the man who'd spent 12 years protecting wildlife from poachers, had discovered his most important mission had been waiting at home all along, protecting his son and making sure no other child suffered what Matthew had endured. As the sun set over our Vermont home, I called Matthew inside for dinner. My son came running, Scout bounding beside him, both of them muddy and happy and safe. "Hey, Dad," Matthew said as we washed up. "You know what? I'm glad you came home early that day." I pulled my son into a hug. "Me too, buddy. Me too." And in the gathering darkness, in a federal prison 3 states away, Dale Hobbs lay on a narrow cot, staring at a ceiling and wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. He thought he was building something, teaching strength, creating warriors. Instead, he created his own destruction because he'd underestimated Julian Hunt. And that had been his fatal mistake. What an unthinkable betrayal, right? Have you ever had to fight for someone you love, against odds you never imagined? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know in the comments below.